Leif Garrett had it all: fame, fortune, and millions of adoring fans. From child actor to teen idol, his career skyrocketed in the 1970s, making him a household name. But behind the glamorous image was a life spiraling out of control. A tragic accident, drug addiction, and legal troubles turned his promising career into a cautionary tale of Hollywood excess. This is the real story of Leif Garrett: the highs, the crashes, and the fight to reclaim his life. Leif Garrett was born as Leif Per Nervik on November 8, 1961, in Hollywood, California. Growing up in the heart of the entertainment industry, he was exposed to show business from an early age. With his striking good looks and natural charisma, it was no surprise that he was pushed into acting before he even had a chance to explore other interests. Unlike many aspiring actors who struggled to break into the business, Garrett's entry into Hollywood seemed inevitable, heavily influenced by his family's connections to the industry. His mother, Carolyn Steller, was an actress who had appeared in small television roles throughout the 1960s and 1970s. More than just a guiding presence, she actively managed Leif's early career, ensuring that both he and his sister, Dawn Lynn, had access to opportunities. As a single mother, she shouldered the responsibility of raising her children while navigating the competitive and often unforgiving entertainment industry. Garrett's father, Rick Nervik, on the other hand, was largely absent from his life. Unlike Carolyn, he had little involvement in Hollywood, and his distant relationship with Leif meant that the young actor lacked a strong paternal figure during his formative years. Both Leif and his sisters, Dawn Lynn and Deborah Lee Scott, were introduced to casting calls at a very young age. Dawn Lynn, like her brother, pursued acting and even appeared alongside him in Walking Tall, 1973, though her career never reached the same level of stardom. Meanwhile, his half-sister Deborah Lee Scott found her own success in television sitcoms like Mary Hartman, and Angie. While the siblings shared similar career paths, Leif quickly became the most famous of them all, his rapid rise to stardom overshadowing their accomplishments. His first role came when he was just 5 years old, landing an uncredited part in the 1969 hit comedy Bob and Carol and Ted and Alice. However, childhood was far from carefree for Garrett. Being thrust into the spotlight at such a young age meant that he had little time for a normal upbringing. The demands of auditions, acting gigs, and the constant scrutiny of Hollywood left little room for a traditional childhood filled with school, friends, and typical adolescent experiences. Instead, his world revolved around the pressures of performance, a theme that would continue throughout his life. Leif Garrett's career is a fascinating study of early stardom, transition between entertainment mediums, and the struggles that often accompany child fame. His rise, fall, and attempts at redemption highlight the complexities of navigating Hollywood, particularly for young actors turned pop stars. His first major breakthrough came in Walking Tall, 1973, where he played Mike Pusser, the son of the film's protagonist. This role was significant because it marked his transition from minor television roles to a feature film that gained widespread recognition. While his part was not the centerpiece of the movie, it provided him exposure to a larger audience and demonstrated his potential as a promising young actor. His subsequent guest starring appearances on Nanny and The Professor, Family Affair, and Gunsmoke showed his versatility and helped him stay relevant in the entertainment industry. However, it was his role in Three for the Road, 1975, that positioned him as a leading young actor. Although the show was canceled after a few months, it played a key role in shaping his image as a teenage heartthrob and expanded his fan base. His transition to music in the late 1970s was a calculated move that capitalized on his growing popularity. Signing with Atlantic Records in 1977, Garrett embraced the teen idol persona, delivering upbeat covers of classics like Surfin' USA and Runaround Sue. These choices weren't particularly innovative, but they played to his strengths: his youthful charm and appeal to young female fans. His ability to turn these covers into hits was a testament to his marketability rather than his musical prowess. As he progressed, Feel the Need, 1978, marked his shift towards a more disco pop sound, aligning with the trends of the late 70s. The album's biggest hit, I Was Made for Dancin', was his defining musical moment, reaching number 10 in the US and number 4 in the UK. This success reinforced his status as a pop culture sensation, but it also boxed him into a very specific niche, one that relied more on image than artistic depth. Despite his musical career taking off, he continued acting, balancing both pursuits. His role in Family, 1978 to 1979, and his lead in Skateboard, 1978, kept him visible in Hollywood, but it was becoming clear that his acting career was being overshadowed by his musical success. While his records sold well, they were largely dependent on the teen idol craze rather than long-term artistic credibility. Many teen stars who achieved similar success in the 70s struggled with the transition to adulthood, and Garrett was no exception. By the early 1980s, Garrett attempted to shift towards more serious acting roles. His casting in Francis Ford Coppola's The Outsiders, 1983, was an opportunity to break free from his teen idol image. Playing Bob Sheldon, a violent and privileged antagonist, was a stark contrast to his previous roles. This performance proved that he was capable of handling mature material, but it did not lead to a major resurgence in his acting career. His subsequent roles in Thunder Alley, 1985, and Cheerleader Camp, 1988, were far less prestigious, reflecting his struggle to maintain relevance in Hollywood as his musical career faded. The 1990s saw Garrett attempting to reinvent himself. He explored different musical collaborations, including a surprising turn with the Melvins, where he provided vocals for their cover of Smells Like Teen Spirit on the Crybaby, 2000. This move suggested that he was willing to experiment and step away from his teen idol past. He also dabbled in theater, taking on the title role in Joseph and the Amazing Technicolor Dreamcoat, a stark contrast to his previous musical endeavors. Despite these attempts to reinvent himself, his struggles with addiction often overshadowed his professional efforts, leading to sporadic work rather than a consistent career comeback. By the 2000s, reality television became a platform for faded celebrities seeking redemption or renewed attention. Garrett's appearance on Celebrity Rehab with Dr. Drew, 2010, was one of the most revealing moments of his career, as it allowed him to openly discuss his long battle with substance abuse. While some reality TV appearances can feel exploitative, Garrett's participation provided insight into the difficulties of handling early fame and the long-term consequences of childhood stardom. His 2019 autobiography, Idle Truth, further detailed his experiences, giving fans a more in-depth look at his rise, fall, and struggles to reclaim his life. Leif Garrett's life and career are a striking example of how early fame can lead to personal and legal struggles, particularly when combined with the pressures of Hollywood and substance abuse. His scandals, particularly his 1979 car accident and long battle with addiction, became defining aspects of his story, shaping both his public image and personal struggles. One of the most significant and tragic incidents in Garrett's life occurred on November 3rd, 1979, just before his 18th birthday. At the time, Garrett was at the peak of his career, adored by millions as a teen idol. But behind the scenes, he had already begun experimenting with drugs and alcohol. That night, he was driving a Porsche 914 in Los Angeles when he rear-ended another vehicle, causing his car to veer off the road and roll down an embankment. His passenger, Roland Winkler, his best friend, was left paralyzed from the chest down as a result of the crash. This accident was not just a personal tragedy, but also a major legal and financial setback for Garrett. Both he and Winkler had been drinking and using drugs, and neither was wearing a seatbelt. Garrett faced legal consequences, including a suspended driver's license and probation. However, the most devastating consequence was the guilt he carried for the rest of his life. Winkler later sued Garrett, leading to a 1984 court ruling that awarded Winkler $3.9 million in damages. This legal battle only added to the weight of responsibility Garrett bore, and despite the settlement, he remained haunted by the accident for decades. The crash marked a turning point. While Garrett was still actively working in the entertainment industry, the public began to associate him less with his music and acting career and more with the controversy surrounding the accident. Unlike some stars who managed to recover from public scandals, Garrett's struggles only deepened as he failed to separate himself from the partying lifestyle that contributed to the crash in the first place. Garrett's issues with drugs were not a one-time mistake, but a prolonged struggle that lasted for decades. He admitted that he had begun using drugs as early as 14, and the reckless partying habits he developed in his teenage years only intensified as he got older. The pressure of being a teen idol, combined with the trauma from the accident, seemed to fuel his substance abuse rather than motivate him to turn his life around. The first major legal trouble related to drugs came in 1997 when Garrett was arrested for possession of cocaine. This was followed by a second arrest in 1999 when he was caught attempting to buy heroin and cocaine from undercover officers. These incidents signaled to the public that Garrett was still battling his demons, but rather than getting the help he needed, he continued down a self-destructive path. Despite multiple court-ordered rehabilitation programs, Garrett struggled to stay clean. In 2006, he was arrested again, this time for heroin possession, after being caught in a Los Angeles subway station without a ticket. His downward spiral seemed to have no end, as he was sentenced to 90 days in jail for failing to complete a court-mandated rehabilitation program. However, even that did not stop him. In 2010, he was once again arrested for heroin possession, this time after police found him in possession of the drug in downtown Los Angeles. He pleaded no contest to the charges and was ordered into another rehabilitation program. But at this point, his public image was severely tarnished. As Garrett aged, he began publicly acknowledging his struggles with addiction, participating in reality television programs that focused on substance abuse and recovery. His most notable appearance was on Celebrity Rehab with Dr. Drew in 2010, where he spoke candidly about his experiences with drugs and how they had derailed his career. While his participation in the show was seen as a step toward rehabilitation, many viewers questioned whether he was truly ready to change or if he was simply using the show for exposure. In 2019, Garrett took another step toward reclaiming his narrative by publishing his autobiography, Idol Truth. The book offered a raw and honest account of his rise to fame, his struggles with addiction, and the personal challenges he faced behind the scenes. Unlike past interviews or reality TV appearances, Idol Truth allowed him to tell his story on his own terms, reflecting on the highs and lows of his life with a sense of self-awareness that had been missing in previous years. Leif Garrett's personal life has been as eventful as his career, with numerous high-profile relationships that often made headlines. His romantic history includes some of the most recognizable names in the entertainment industry, and while he never married, his love life was marked by both passion and heartbreak. One of the most talked about relationships of his youth was his involvement with singer Michelle Phillips, who was 34 years old at the time, while Garrett was only 17. The significant age gap made their romance a topic of public intrigue and media speculation. Michelle Phillips, known for her role in the iconic group the Mamas and the Papas, had already experienced a full career in the music industry, while Garrett was still in the early stages of his. This relationship, whether brief or prolonged, was a reflection of the fast-paced and often unconventional lifestyle that Garrett was living at such a young age. Being thrust into the entertainment industry from childhood, he was exposed to mature relationships and experiences far earlier than most, which may have influenced his future romantic entanglements. Following this early controversy, Garrett entered into a long-term relationship with actress Nicolette Sheridan. Their on and off romance lasted for 5 years and ended in 1985. At the time, both were rising stars in Hollywood, and their relationship was closely followed by fans and the press. Sheridan, who later became widely known for her role in Desperate Housewives, was another major figure in the entertainment industry that Garrett was linked to. Their relationship was not only high profile, but also one of the most significant in his life, considering its length and the deep connection they appeared to share. However, as with many celebrity romances, the pressures of their careers and the fast-paced nature of Hollywood likely played a role in their eventual breakup. During his time on the hit television series Family, Garrett was romantically linked to his co-star Christy McNichol. Their on-screen chemistry translated into real life, making them one of the most talked-about young couples of the time. The romance between two rising stars, both admired by teenage fans, only fueled the media frenzy surrounding their relationship. However, McNichol later withdrew from the spotlight due to personal struggles, and whatever relationship they shared eventually faded into the background of their respective careers. Garrett was also rumored to have been involved with actresses Tatum O'Neal and Justine Bateman, two other prominent names in Hollywood during the 1970s and 1980s. While there is little detailed public information about these relationships, they reflect his continued involvement with some of the most famous young actresses of the time. O'Neal, an Academy Award-winning actress, and Bateman, known for her role in Family Ties, were both figures who, like Garrett, had experienced early success in Hollywood and the intense pressures that came with it. In the 1990s, Garrett found what seemed to be a more stable and meaningful relationship with actress Elaine Bilstad. Unlike some of his previous high-profile relationships, this one appeared to be more private and long-term. Unfortunately, tragedy struck when Bilstad passed away in 1999 due to heart complications. Her untimely death was a devastating blow to Garrett, adding another layer of personal struggle to his already complex life. Losing someone he was deeply connected to may have further influenced his battles with addiction and personal demons in the years that followed. Despite his numerous relationships, Garrett never married. His reluctance or inability to settle down could be attributed to a combination of factors: the instability of Hollywood relationships, the effects of his early fame, and his struggles with personal issues. Many child stars find it difficult to maintain lasting relationships due to the pressures and lifestyle that come with early fame, and Garrett was no exception. His romantic history mirrors the ups and downs of his career, filled with intense highs, sudden losses, and relationships that were often defined by the era he was living in. Leif Garrett's personal and professional life has always been intertwined with the people he surrounded himself with, whether they were romantic partners, collaborators, or fellow entertainers from the same era. While his romantic relationships often grabbed headlines, his connections within the entertainment industry were equally significant in shaping his career trajectory, particularly as he attempted multiple comebacks in the 1990s and 2000s. As the height of his teen idol fame faded, Garrett's presence in the mainstream entertainment industry diminished. However, he resurfaced in the late 1990s as the host of VH1's 8-track Flashback, a nostalgic music series that replaced David Cassidy, another former teen idol of the 1970s. This transition marked an important shift in his career. Rather than being at the center of pop culture, Garrett found himself reflecting on the past, embracing his identity as a former star, rather than actively trying to reclaim the same level of fame. His hosting gig, while short-lived, demonstrated that he still had an audience who remembered him fondly, even if his music career had long since declined. During this same period, VH1 featured Garrett in a 1999 episode of Behind the Music, a documentary series that chronicled the rise, fall, and potential redemption of major music stars. His episode was particularly revealing, as it delved into the struggles he faced with substance abuse, his car accident that left his best friend paralyzed, and the difficulties of maintaining a career after being one of the most recognizable faces of the late 1970s. The show not only reignited public interest in his story, but also painted a more complex portrait of him. Beyond the glossy teen magazine covers and upbeat pop music, he was someone who had endured real hardships and mistakes. Despite his turbulent past, Garrett continued his involvement in music, albeit in a very different scene from his disco pop roots. Around the time of his Behind the Music feature, he joined the band Godspeed, an alternative rock group. However, the project was short-lived, and the band recorded only a handful of tracks before disbanding. Still, this brief attempt at reviving his music career showed his willingness to experiment beyond the teen pop image that had once defined him. Perhaps one of the most unexpected turns in Garrett's career came when he collaborated with Melvins, a band associated with the grunge and sludge metal scene. He provided vocals for their cover of Nirvana's Smells Like Teen Spirit on their 2000 album, The Crybaby. This partnership was a sharp contrast to his earlier music, suggesting that Garrett was open to reinventing himself and stepping into more experimental territory. However, it was more of a one-off novelty than a true career reinvention, as he never fully immersed himself in the alternative rock movement. Following this collaboration, Garrett took another stab at forming a band, creating F8, a hard rock group where he played an active role in songwriting. Unlike his earlier work, F8 was an attempt at crafting original material rather than relying on covers of oldies or capitalizing on nostalgia. However, much like his previous projects, F8 never gained significant traction, and his attempts to establish himself as a serious rock musician failed to translate into a lasting musical comeback. Despite these efforts, Garrett's public persona increasingly leaned into his past rather than his future. He embraced self-parody with his appearance in Dickie Roberts' Former Child Star, 2003, a comedy starring David Spade about a washed-up ex-child star attempting to relive his glory days. The film featured cameos from several real-life former child stars, including Danny Bonaduce and Barry Williams, who, like Garrett, had experienced the ups and downs of early fame. By participating in the film, Garrett demonstrated an awareness of his own place in pop culture, a relic of a bygone era, but one that still held a certain nostalgic value. His relationships with fellow former teen idols and child stars extended beyond just film appearances. He often crossed paths with others who who had undergone similar struggles with fame, addiction, and career reinvention. Whether through reality television, nostalgic music events, or candid interviews, Garrett remained part of the conversation surrounding what happens to young stars when the spotlight fades. His connection to figures like David Cassidy, Danny Bonaduce, and others was not just professional but also personal. They shared a unique experience that very few could understand. Leif Garrett's attempts to remain relevant in the entertainment industry were often overshadowed by his financial and legal troubles, which became increasingly public as the years went on. While he struggled to reinvent himself musically and embraced nostalgia through reality television appearances, his personal life continued to spiral. His financial instability, fueled by a long history of substance abuse, poor career management, and legal issues, eventually led him into financial ruin. By the early 2000s, Garrett's career was no longer generating the kind of income that had once allowed him to live lavishly during his teenage years. His music sales had dwindled, his acting roles had become sporadic, and his attempts at forming new bands had largely been unsuccessful. The nostalgia circuit, which allowed other former teen idols to make a modest living, did not provide the financial security Garrett needed. His reckless spending habits, combined with his ongoing struggle with addiction, left him in a dire financial situation. In October 2001, Garrett officially filed for personal bankruptcy in a federal court in Los Angeles. Court documents revealed the extent of his financial distress. His monthly income was only $1,000, which was a gift from his mother, and his assets were limited to basic household goods, clothing, and about $350 in cash. Even more alarming, he had accumulated $76,198 in unpaid credit card debt over 4 years, an indication of both financial mismanagement and the long-term effects of a fading career. Despite his financial struggles, Garrett continued to pursue music. In 2004, he released a single, Betty Ford for Christmas, with the band The Crush-Ups, an ironic nod to his history with substance abuse and rehabilitation. While the song gained some attention, it did little to revive his career or improve his financial standing. At the same time, he began turning to reality television as a way to stay in the public eye. He appeared on several shows, including Stargate's The 70s House and Celebrity Fear Factor, which provided short-term paychecks but did not offer a long-term solution to his ongoing financial woes. In 2006, Garrett's legal troubles resurfaced in a way that highlighted both his addiction and financial struggles. He was arrested in Los Angeles for attempting to ride the subway without a ticket. While fare evasion is a minor offense, the situation quickly escalated when police discovered that Garrett was in possession of heroin. The incident was a stark illustration of his downward spiral, from a former teen idol who once graced magazine covers to a man struggling with addiction, unable to afford basic transportation. The arrest was followed by another attempt at rehabilitation, as he voluntarily entered a live-in drug rehab program. However, this was not the first or last time Garrett would attempt to break free from addiction. Following his time in rehab, Garrett made several attempts to return to the entertainment industry. In 2007, he released a solo album, 3 Sides Of, which featured a re-recording of his biggest hit, I Was Made for Dancin'. However, the album did not gain significant traction, and Garrett remained largely out of the mainstream music scene. In 2010, he made another high-profile attempt at addressing his addiction by joining the cast of Celebrity Rehab with Dr. Drew. The show gave him a platform to candidly discuss his struggles, but his participation also underscored just how much his life had deviated from the glamorous image of his youth. While some former stars successfully used reality TV to launch career comebacks, Garrett's appearance only reinforced the tragic arc of his life. Despite these struggles, Garrett continued to engage with music in small ways. In 2013, he made a guest appearance on the alternative rock band Tantric's album 37 Channels. Around the same time, he attempted to use his life experience to warn younger stars about the dangers of fame. In August 2013, he publicly offered advice to Justin Bieber, cautioning him about the pitfalls of early success and the temptations that come with it. The gesture, while well-intended, highlighted the stark contrast between the two artists, one at the peak of his career, the other long past his prime, speaking from a place of regret. Leif Garrett's current state is a reflection of both the highs and lows that have defined his life. Once a teenage icon adored by millions, he now faces a reality where his health is deteriorating and his career, once filled with promise, has taken a tragic turn. His struggles, largely rooted in decades of substance abuse, legal troubles, and financial instability, have compounded over time, leaving lasting effects on both his physical and mental well-being. The transition from teen heartthrob to a man battling the consequences of fame has been both difficult and highly publicized. His 2019 memoir, Idle Truth, provided perhaps the most unfiltered look into his life, allowing him to take control of his narrative. In the book, Garrett detailed his early rise to stardom, the pressures of being a young celebrity, and how the entertainment industry exploited him. He candidly described the cycle of drug addiction that consumed much of his adult life, as well as the emotional toll that came with being discarded by Hollywood after his fame faded. The memoir wasn't just a recollection of his career. It was a deeper exploration of the vulnerabilities that come with child stardom and the long-lasting scars left by rapid success. Many former child stars have spoken out about the isolating nature of fame, and Garrett's story fits this tragic pattern: an early breakthrough, unchecked access to fame and fortune, and an eventual decline exacerbated by substance abuse and poor financial management. Despite his past struggles, Garrett has not completely disappeared from the public eye. He remains engaged with his fan base, using social media as a way to maintain a connection with those who still remember him. While he no longer performs regularly or appears in major productions, his presence online allows him to reflect on his past and share messages of gratitude with his supporters. His engagement with fans, particularly through platforms like Facebook, indicates that he still values the relationship he built with his audience, even if his career is no longer at the forefront of pop culture. In addition to social media, Garrett has used interviews and public discussions to reflect on his life experiences. He has become more open about the dangers of early fame, frequently cautioning younger artists about the pitfalls that come with sudden success. Having lived through the consequences of financial mismanagement and addiction, he has positioned himself as someone who can offer hard-earned wisdom to those in the industry. His warnings to stars like Justin Bieber about the excesses of fame show that he recognizes his past mistakes and hopes to prevent others from following the same path. Despite his efforts to stay connected with fans and share his story, his health has been a growing concern. The long-term effects of addiction, combined with the natural process of aging, have taken a toll on his body. While he may not be in the public eye as frequently as before, the impact of his past choices continues to shape his present. Unlike many of his former peers who successfully transitioned into new careers or found stability, Garrett's life remains a cautionary tale about the costs of fame when not managed properly. His story resonates with many because it reflects the fragile nature of stardom and the personal battles that persist long after the cameras stop rolling. While his career may have taken a tragic turn, his resilience and willingness to share his truth serve as a reminder that fame is fleeting, but the lessons learned along the way can still be meaningful. Even as his health declines, Garrett's openness about his struggles provides a sobering look at the reality of Hollywood fame, one that is often far more complex and painful than the public perceives.